never expected my therapy to kind of help me be a better dispatcher, but it sure as heck did, I tell you.
Hey y'all, thanks for tuning in to another episode of 911 Delta Tethered for Life podcast. As usual, this episode may not be suitable for all listeners due to language and content, so listen with care and stay safe out there.
Hey y'all, we're back with another great episode of 911 Delta Tethered for Life podcast. We're your hosts, Kacey and Anna. Join us tonight as we talk with Deborah from Sacramento. So grab those headsets, let's talk.
Welcome, Deborah. It's great to have you with us tonight. Why don't you start us off by telling us how you got into this crazy dispatch life?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so it all started when I was in 1986, just out of high school. I joined the California National Guard as a communications specialist. Then as I went in about 4 years in, I became a military police officer, and we were deployed to the LA riots for Rodney King.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Back in 1992. And so it kind of overlapped. So I became I was in the dispatch academy for Sacramento Police Department. And then I deployed while I was at the academy. So I kind of did their academy a little different than most. And had some pseudo combat experience along with it.
I would think the riots would probably count. Oh my gosh.
That was amazing. Looking back, I can see where my PTSD started, was there. So I was coming up for renewal with the National Guard, and I decided not to renew and just stayed as a dispatcher and got out of the military. Sacramento let go of me during probation because I was technically not fast enough for them. I just wasn't getting it, but they said that I would do great in a smaller agency. So that's what I did. I applied to smaller agencies and then got hired with El Dorado County, which is just to the east of Sacramento, and was there for 27 years.
Awesome. Wow. That's great.
Yeah,
I think
it's crazy, how they say, "Oh, you're not gonna get it," and then 27 years later.
Yeah,
right. I mean, they said Sacramento even hired me back for an interim as just a call taker. So I mean, I wasn't bad. It was just I wasn't on the radio portion. I didn't meet their qualifications because you had to do everything there.
Yeah.
So it was like, that's, and that's fine. They were, and being willing to hire me back showed that I was still capable of doing the job, just not at that agency, which that was perfectly fine. I enjoyed El Dorado.
That's good.
It was a good agency at the time.
And El Dorado, like, can you kind of set the stage? Like, you said it was a smaller agency, so like, can you tell us how like that was set up and like that kind of thing?
Oh, sure. When I first started there, they were a consolidated agency, so they had the sheriff's office, one of the city police, Placerville, and also the fire department for the county was all in one dispatch center, and there were 5 dispatchers.
Okay.
So you had 4 people doing radio. So you had 3 on law, and then 1 fire, and then 1 call taker.
Wow.
But everybody did dual duty. Okay. So, if the last person to grab the phones would have been the person working the busy radio for the sheriff's office. So, everybody, they had like a little hierarchy of radios and stuff. So, and in 1997, 96 or 97, we lost fire to Cal Fire, who dispatches for 2 counties. They have a dispatch center for El Dorado and Amador, so they went there. And then in 2001, we lost Placerville Police to their own dispatch. So basically it kind of it went from 3 agencies to 1, but our workload never got smaller.
Yeah.
Right.
I believe that.
As the county grew and things happened and we took on more responsibilities, it was basically more, even though we were doing less agencies.
Yeah.
So
Go figure.
Right. Just
Yeah.
more people calling, right?
Absolutely. And we also worked with state parks and forest service and fish and wildlife and things like that, because we go from a semi-urban environment to national forest. So it goes from Sacramento all the way to the Nevada state line.
Wow.
So it's a big county, and there's
Oh, yeah.
forest and things like that. So it was a good experience because we dispatched and worked with so many agencies.
Yeah.
But
Wow. And actually just saw on my scanner app a couple nights ago, popped up that Sacramento was having some working wildfires.
Oh my gosh, yes, in my neighborhood, as a matter of fact.
Really?
oh my,
my
gosh.
I thought I
We
almost
had-
turned it on, but I was
Oh
in the
my-
middle of doing something, and I didn't. But it's so
Yeah, we
interesting. My
had
brother
about-
actually worked out in Oregon
Oh, okay.
for a few seasons, doing wildland fires. So I'm just interested in, like, how does that go in the dispatch environment? Like, something we don't really have here.
Disregard the phone. That's my husband calling, forgetting that I'm on the podcast.
Of course.
So, actually, it was kind of. I enjoyed working the fires. You get people, because we were the PSAP, so we would get all the initial calls and then transfer them to the fire department. But we also, when we had big fires, we had the King Fire. Oh gosh, that was right before, I think that was 2015, 2016 when we had that big one up there. And so we had to organize the law enforcement part of it, because nobody realizes when fires in there on these big fires and we're having evacuations, you have to send law enforcement in there to kind of keep an eye on the houses and stuff, because people will take advantage of that and go in and start looting houses after evacuations. And so there's a lot of law enforcement coordinations. When we had the one in Paradise, it was the same thing. They just called in everybody, and there must have been maybe 20 counties that went up to assist with those. And you do kind of a rotating, you do 3 or 4 days, and then they come off the shift and then do 3 or 4 more, they do a rotating thing. But that was always, and I know that sounds morbid. It was fun to do, working the fire radio.
Yeah, I like the fire radio too. I got you.
So we were working the fire departments, but we were working fire support. So yeah, it was it's an interesting coordinated effort that goes on behind the scenes that people don't see, that I do miss. But so you were mentioning the fires. Yeah, so we had 5 of those wildland fires right around our neighborhood, because I live in Rancho Cordova in the south part. So yeah, we had several big ones right by us, but luckily, because of the wind, they were burning away from the houses, so that was good. But,
yeah, we had last year, we had a few pop up here, and it was crazy because actually the county that I live in, was a huge law enforcement presence, because they had to actually go do evacuations, which, we normally don't have to do that, but they actually had to go do some. And like, my mother-in-law was like, I saw like a whole bunch of fire trucks and then a whole bunch of deputies like flying down this road. And she's like, that's really weird to see them traveling together. And I was like, well,
not
because the mountain's trying to burn up. But It's okay. And it was a really, I listened to that for a long time on the radio, and it was just, they did an amazing job of coordinating all that, knowing that that's not something that they normally have to do.
Right.
So I can't imagine what it's like out there. And we had, Kacey and I have had a funny conversation. I don't know who started the conversation about the tanker. Kacey, do you remember that?
Oh gosh.
But so, and my brother, who worked out west, is like, yeah, I didn't know until I got out there and did wildland, like a tanker is an airplane, because here it's not. It's a big truck that carries water.
Yes.
Right. And so we've had this like big several episodes on the podcast where we're laughing about the difference between a tanker and
oh
a
my
tender.
gosh, that's gonna bother me.
Yeah.
Right. And then how did the word tender ever come into play? And the only thing that I've been able to find is that it's after the rail car.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay. But yeah, there were several episodes where we had a bunch of firefighters on and we were joking about it. Like,
yeah, Sacramento is the hub for Cal Fire for their air squadron.
okay.
All their air tankers, and we have the big 740 or 737. That's the tanker.
Yeah.
So when there's a big fire, I get lots of air traffic over my house.
I bet.
Oh gosh.
Wow. That's crazy.
That's great.
And what else was I going to ask you? Oh, about the riots.
Oh my gosh.
What was that like?
So when you go to basic training, you're trained to fight against an enemy, a foreign enemy, a faceless foreign enemy. Somebody that does. So when in the National Guard, you're also deployed out to civil unrest. So like 2020, when we had all of that George Floyd stuff going on and things like that. So, but you're not prepared for it. It's not and back in 92, we were going through Operation Desert Storm and Desert Shield at the time. So a lot of our units were going over to Iraq. My husband at the time went over to Iraq, or not Iraq, Saudi Arabia at the time. So we were preparing for that, and we were doing training for that. And then all of a sudden this thing in LA happens. So we have a large military police division here in California. So everybody, boom, we're all down there helping out LAPD and CHP. And yeah, it was crazy. So when we went in, we were assigned to Long Beach at the time. And when we drove into Long Beach, there was a working fire and active looting going on just about every single block as we're driving in. And over the course of 3 or 4 days, we were able to get that all under control. And then they moved our unit up to do security for Parker Center, which was LAPD headquarters at the time, which was right across the street from City Hall. So yeah, and you just
crazy.
and I mean, people are looking at you. And I actually did get shot at in Long Beach, which was really crazy. So I mean, it's just stuff that you don't expect. And especially from, going in and trying to curtail violence by your own people, which is just, it was very odd. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's crazy to me.
So
yeah, I cannot imagine yeah, I've watched some like documentaries on it. I just cannot even imagine that.
Yeah. And I did get a really cool ride along though. Because I worked the night shift. We had 2 shifts, and they put me as dispatcher because I was going I was in the academy. They put me in as like a dispatcher because I had my communication specialty also. So I knew what they were like, okay, you do this. And so that's what I was doing. But in the middle of the night, there was nothing going on. So my lieutenant came up and we did a ride along with the LAPD detective. And we went down into Watts, and he showed us the Watts Towers. And we went into South Central and also went into what they call the jungle. I don't know if you ever saw the Denzel Washington movie, The Rookie.
Yep.
So he goes into the jungle, those wild apartments there. Yeah, that's we went into there in the middle of the night, but I did have a gun. So
well, that's pretty cool.
So yeah, it was different though, it's just I was glad to be done with that afterwards.
Yeah, I guess so. That's a lot.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. All right. So what made you decide to get into this crazy career of public safety?
Well, my family is all public service. So whether it's the military or my father was in corrections for years. So it was just kind of a given. And when I started applying for jobs, I was applying to, sheriff's department as deputies or an officer type of position. And at the time when you go in and test, there would be 600 people going in to apply for 10 positions. I mean,
Wow.
it was
Crazy.
absolutely outrageous. So somebody mentioned going into dispatch, and I said, oh, gee, how hard could that be? Let's go do this. So yeah, that's how I started, just, going in, and, it was public service. It was a steady job, and, that's pretty much what I needed at the time.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, can you share, you've shared quite a few awesome stories already, but can you share more memorable, good or bad, both experiences, calls, or incidents from your career that has had a significant impact on you?
Oh my gosh. Geez. That's it just I mean each one has its own each individual
Yeah.
call has its own little story, but I mean there were times when Christmas we had to send some people out to go and take some kids away from parents on Christmas Eve, and that's always tough. So what we did as a shift is we all, ponied up some money, sent somebody over to Walmart, and we made sure that those kids had a great Christmas morning the
That's
next
awesome.
day at their emergency foster care. So, and the little lady who called up, her dog had died and she couldn't afford to have it buried, and so that we yet again we ponied up the money and had the dog taken and cremated for her, and just doing stuff like that was always made me feel good, that I could help out the community, because it wasn't a large, I mean, it was there were, the communities, but and I didn't live up there, but still I worked up there, and we wanted to have do something meaningful, because you don't get to do that a lot.
No,
You're going in and
don't.
you're sending people out to arrest people, and there's usually mayhem and foolishness involved, and so so to do something nice really helped out. There's As far as the other side, I don't know, it's kind of funny because I watch these shows on ID. You would not believe how many I was involved in. Our county did a whole bunch of those. So yeah, so I had some really good, some really memorable murders, and a couple that I still kind of hold near and dear to my heart. There was one where a daughter and her boyfriend killed mom,
Mm.
and um, I had talked to mom not the week before because mom was concerned that daughter was she was like 14 or 15 at the time, sleeping with this over 18 kid. And so I had I don't know, offered up the solution of, let's press charges against him for statutory rape and things like that. And then the next week she turns up dead at their hands. And I've always felt a little
Oh,
guilty about, maybe if
sure.
I hadn't have pushed a little so hard, maybe she'd still be alive, kind of stuff. But you never know what's going to happen, and you're just trying to do the best
No.
for the people that you're trying to help out.
Yep.
And but yeah, we have, the um had another one where the fire department called up for a fire a vehicle fire that they had found on the side of the road. And the guys are out in the field, and they're calling me going, there's a bag of brains hanging from
Oh my gosh.
the tree next to the thing. And I'm going, well, okay. And you're typing it in and you're letting people know. And it's like, okay, maybe we want to get somebody out there. Well, after I'm done with that, the wife calls to report husband missing.
Oh shit.
And I went, okay, there it is. She did it. And it ended up, she did kill him.
Oh
So,
my
yeah, so
God.
it was just, so,
Yeah.
but yeah, a lot of them have shown up on a lot of those programs on ID. So
Wow.
I'll be running. My husband will listen to it, and I'll be in the kitchen. Hear a voice, and I'm going, "Okay, hon, which one is it today?" Because I'll hear my detectives. So,
Jeez.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've had two like that, right, Casey?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
yeah,
you know what? So we can talk about what irritates you the most when you hear those on ID, and like when you hear people talking about the 911 call, because it drives me bonkers when people are like analyzing the 911 call and they've never taken one in their lives. And it's
Oh
like,
my gosh.
really?
Yeah.
I think I don't hear them analyzing the calls a lot, but I think they misrepresent that
Yes.
that dispatchers actually have brains.
Right.
Yes.
And that we're trying to do our best by what our policies and procedures are to get the information that we can. Um, uh, I don't think they give us the credit that, a lot of times just by us asking certain questions, we can actually solve that case for them
Right.
Yep.
and
Yep.
get those people to maybe admit things on the phone that they can't in that little interview room. Because I'm not, as a dispatcher, I'm just asking questions, and
Mhm.
they're being recorded, but the Miranda rights don't apply to that phone call.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And sure as shit, this is going to change because of this interview. So just saying.
Well,
All right.
that's okay.
We don't have to worry about it anymore. So
That's right.
Exactly.
We're all retired now, so.
Exactly.
So, with all of that, how do you manage stress and maintain resilience? Since I know you're retired, but when you were still in the role and that kind of thing, and even now, like how?
Well, back when I started, and I don't know when you ladies started, but I started back in, the early 90s. So there wasn't a plan put in place, a policy that, if somebody's getting stressed out, let's just send them outside and kind of cool down, maybe bring in a chaplain, have them talk, or, is our department therapist available? Let's bring them in. Nothing. Suck it up, buttercup, is what is what we were dealing with. So you get it, after so many years, it just becomes a habit. You don't. So, there may be alcohol involved. I know I drank a little bit, but um um I smoked and had caffeine. I think that's what dispatch centers run on, is
Yeah.
cigarettes and coffee. So um so we would just go outside and have a cigarette and just kind of chill, and that was how we dealt with it. You didn't really talk. You'd maybe talk about it in the center and stuff, but nobody really wanted to do that. Nobody talked.
Yeah.
Then around 2015, I had open heart surgery because of I had a aortic valve replacement in April of 2015. So I was out until July. I came back, and after that, I was diagnosed with what's called post perfusion syndrome. And it's just something that happens when you're put on a bypass machine. It causes strange things in your brain to happen. And so, any depression, anxiety, anything like that kind of multiplies on itself after that. So, um, I ended up having to go into therapy, and was in a support group, a weekly support group, for a couple years after that, and learned tools to help deal with um, the stress that I was going through at the time, which I think was a benefit. Um, Not many
Right.
people get that chance to do that,
Yeah.
and because of something not job related. So, um,
Right. It'd be nice if they would teach you those tools, job
oh my,
related, right?
exactly. I did have a supervisor that sent me to a SISM class,
Hmm.
which was really great. I really enjoyed that. Um, and got to connect with some really good people with peer support in the area here. So that really helped in the long run. Um, but I didn't have anything until 2015. Nobody said, "Hey, why don't we do this?" Or no, nobody stressed peer support if you had a bad call, or even just, it was just suck it up and come back to work the next day.
Right.
And so that's what we did. It was not pretty. Um, but after that, I learned uh, a lot of tools and things. And then in 2019, I had my big incident where I lost a deputy. Uh, he was, we sent them to a call. There were three of them and a ride along, and they were ambushed, and one of them was killed, and another one was shot and injured. Um, and I, uh, that was the straw that broke the camel's back for me. But I would hate to think what I would be like had I not have been in therapy already, and not having those tools, where
Right.
it did help, but it didn't um it didn't save it in the long run. I still retired because of that.
Right. I mean, that's a hard one though. Like,
That it was tough.
yeah.
Especially when you're in a small department, and you're all really close. So, we're all kind of like family, and then that happens. And so it was a tough year. It happened in October of 2019, and then 5 months later we're all in COVID. So
Oh,
taking a bunch of people with a bunch of trauma and shoving them, telling them they can't do anything to escape their house when they're off duty, it was we lost um all the people that were involved in that incident are no longer working.
wow.
um Me and all and the three other deputies that were involved in that. So, you know, um after that, but that incident it did have some positive qualities to it. So we had that de-escalation immediately after. We did have the briefings after, and for the first couple weeks, but the long term peer support, or what do you want to call it, the long term care wasn't there. The short term was, but that
Gotcha.
long term we had to go and provide it. So luckily I have health insurance that covers the mental health care.
Right.
So I continued on mine, but there came a point where one of the supervisors that I had said, "No, you need to go on workman's comp." And she was very she facilitated me going on to workman's comp, so, and then eventually getting deemed permanently disabled and going through my retirement.
Right. Did you think that was helpful, or?
I think it helped me because it took that decision off my shoulders,
Mm-hmm.
where I was trying to hold on with, every little, I was grasping at whatever I need to, because I was like, I need this job. I was in that mindset. Don't fire me. I know I can do this. There, when you're going through PTSD, there's a lot that you don't realize is happening, or that you don't see is happening.
Yes.
So I was grasping, and finally I had somebody say, "No, you can't do this anymore. We need to get you help." And it was just like, "Oh, thank you."
Yeah.
I'm not having to carry that load anymore.
Right.
And my psychiatrist signed me out in October of 2020. And then I spent the next 10 months kind of in limbo, going through therapy and going through the workman's comp system. And then I finally retired in June of 2021.
Okay.
It's awesome.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things that people don't understand about post-traumatic stress, is that those things that are happening that you don't know are happening. And why I think that we need to make it more like, we need to train people on how to identify it in
Mm-hmm.
their coworkers, their spouses, their whatever, because there are things that you can notice if you're paying attention.
Right.
But a lot of people are just like, oh, well, that person's just being an ass, or, something. And
Right.
that's not what it is, right? It's that there's things going
Exactly.
on
Yeah.
that your brain's just not in control of.
Yeah. And the supervisor I had, my direct supervisor, took me down that disciplinary route, where she either refused to see that I was having problems and needed help. She just got butthurt because I snapped at her one day.
Right.
Because, when you've got a radio and you've got a phone and then you got a yammering supervisor, it's like, stop.
Yeah.
I said, stop, just hold on a second. And that's when she just started write up after write up after write up. And that
Nice.
takes a person who has PTSD even down a darker hole.
Yep.
And so luckily I had this other supervisor who finally said, something's going on and this shouldn't be happening, and took me under her wing, and we got me the help I needed.
Cool.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
good.
Because we're, dispatchers eat their own.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And
sure.
it shouldn't be that way. We should be there, we should be building each other up, not cutting each other down.
Indeed. So what are the key qualities or skills that you believe are essential for someone working in public safety?
Oh my gosh. wanting to be there always helps. Wanting to do some sort of service. There's a big difference between somebody who takes this on as a job and somebody who takes this on as a career. Somebody who needs a job and somebody who wants a job. And those people that want to be there are going to be so much more successful than those that are just trying to get a paycheck. You know, you have to have that drive. This job is not for everybody. And that's okay. You know,
Right.
it's okay if you can't do this job. You know, I mean, how many times have we been told by guys coming in the center going, I don't know how you guys do it. You know,
More
they come in and see us doing this, you know, and they're like, oh, we can't do that. And it's like,
Yeah.
well, why don't you come in and sit down for a while and see what we actually do?
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
and um and also I don't know if having a thick skin would be a good quality for this job, but having a really twisted sense of humor would help.
Oh yeah.
um um and understanding that um you're not going to be talking to people on their best day, you know, and having, you know, after 28 years you realize that you have become, I became a almost a paralegal, um, a social worker, a psychologist, a great typist, and a IT person. You know, so I mean, if you've got kind of all that wrapped in you, then you know this is the job for you. I really, you know,
Yep.
Yeah. Definitely have to have all of those qualities for sure. Yes, for
I
sure.
never expected my therapy to kind of help me be a better dispatcher, but it sure as heck did. I tell you.
Like you said, everybody, it's every man for himself. Everybody's gonna eat their own, and
Yeah.
it gets old. I mean,
Yeah.
when Casey and I worked on the same shift together, we didn't have that, but it's almost like a cyclical thing. And I've worked in two
Mhm.
different centers too, and I felt like it was the same way in both. Like you would get good supervisors or a good manager and things would go pretty well, right? And things would be looking up, and then you know, that would
Oh, yeah.
end. And
Yeah.
then you'd go through a bad cycle again. And it's really hard to keep up with that, especially if you don't realize how all of that factors into your mental health and how that can
Right.
affect like post-traumatic stress
Yeah.
and what burnout really is. And so that's why we do the show, so to kind of open people's eyes and say, hey, like these are normal things that we
Right.
all go through, and we just want to kind of help everybody get through it better.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if you figure out that the job is not for you, then that's cool. You know.
Yeah, we had a trainee. How long was she there? 3 weeks. And she finally said, you know, I don't think I can do this job. She goes, I like looking through life with my rose colored glasses and not seeing
Right.
the bad part of this county. And and I said, hey, if that's you, then, that's great. At least you're finding this out now and not 10 years into the job going, oh, what did I do?
Right.
So but I was always straight up with my trainees. It's like this is a tough job. And if you can't handle it, then, we can try to get you through this training, but, is your heart really into it? So, I mean, I had to have heart to hearts with several people, and it's not it's not easy to do that and saying, I don't think you're right for this job. But now, that it was a really great job and I loved doing that job. But, there comes a time where you just can't do it anymore and you got to leave it to those that are more capable.
Yep.
And I just hope that by shows like yours and others that are out there that we can get it through to these fire chiefs, police chiefs, to sheriffs, um, heads of Department of Justice, that we need to start a good mental health program for all of our people, and not just the cops, not just the firefighters, but dispatchers and medics and even jail personnel.
Yeah.
Because it affects all of us. And we've got to stop the suck it up buttercup attitude, the stigma that going to a therapist is bad. And I kind of put it this way, especially to cops on the street. Would you rather have your partner not be going to therapy, be stressed out, and then get you killed in the process? Or would you rather have your partner acknowledge the fact that he's got a problem, be in therapy and working on it, and actually save you?
Right. Right.
So, when you put it to people that way, then they kind of understand a little better that just because we're in therapy doesn't mean that we are broken, but doesn't mean that we're going to continue to be broken.
Right.
But if we're not in therapy, or we're not getting that mental health care, or not acknowledging that we need mental health care, then we could end up actually killing somebody.
Yeah.
And it's just something that we've got to get out there. And there's the Congress has something going through, and I still have yet to get a hold of my congressman. But there is a mental health care act going through Congress right now. And unfortunately, I don't know the name of it, but it's for better mental health care for all first responders. Plus, the 911 Saves Act is still kind of
Right.
working
That's
its
still.
way through, and we need to get that one passed too, so that dispatchers can be reclassified.
Yeah.
And
That's a big one.
that's a big one, yes. But with all the mayhem and foolishness that's going on in Congress, it's hard to get a hold of my congressman because everybody's calling.
Well, right. And I mean, I feel like there's, no matter the year, there's always mayhem and foolishness going on
Oh,
in Congress. It's like,
yeah.
Can we really do something important and not a bunch of, stuff that's,
Yeah.
ends up not being important.
Right.
And it's frustrating, like talking earlier in like the true crime shows where they're very rarely do they actually have a dispatcher or a communications officer, whatever you want to call them, on a show. Usually only
Mhm.
if it's one that's gone to court, right? And I get it, because we can talk about stuff, but at the same time, there's plenty of us who have done the job, who know what it's like and could represent people in a better light than, representing us like we don't have any brain cells and we're just there, you know.
Well, and it's like the bad when you have a bad dispatcher. I know there was a couple in some of the bigger cities that made the news 10-15 years ago because they were sleeping.
Right.
Um, and they just make it look bad for the rest of us.
Right.
And it's like not every center does that. You would get people after that calling up and going, "Did I wake you up?" And it's like, how rude.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
The
come on.
stupidity, yes.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, and you try to educate as much as you can, but there's only so much you can do. But then we've got great shows, even though the plot lines are kind of weird, but like 911 and 911 Lone Star that have dispatchers in them as active participants. There's also 911 Crisis Center that I think is on like Bravo or something like that. And then
Right.
Fox had one also that was pretty good. But getting in and showing the dispatcher point of view has been, I think, a big boost to what we do, which is good.
So what advice would you give to somebody coming into it?
So take your time, but get a therapist right away. Um,
Yes.
get a therapist, get somebody that you mesh with, that you can go see once a quarter, twice a year, whatever, so that when the shit does hit the fan, and it will,
Yep.
you have somebody that you're established with that you can go and talk to. And kind of do research to find somebody that might be good with trauma also, and where you can go to get your EMDR or brain spotting or just plain old fashioned trauma therapy, and that way you can make this a career rather than just a job, because had somebody told me this 20 years ago, 30 years ago, I probably would have gone, yeah, right, okay, whatever, but I think listening to us old crusty dispatchers and kind of take some stuff and go and get established and have that support system that you can establish, and get involved with peer support, or if you don't have peer support in your department, try and get some started, because there is whether or not we like it, there is going to be a time you're going to need it.
Yep. Unfortunately, that is true.
And
That is true. And what was your experience? Chip was talking last week about having started peer support, but then nobody coming to it.
we had a really good one. I tried to apply several times, but the manager that we had at the time would only allow one dispatcher to be in peer support. And the problem was that one dispatcher that was in peer support was an abusive supervisor.
Of course.
So nobody went to her. So, I mean, what? So now they have several people that are there, and I keep in touch with my old coworkers, and their mental health plan has gotten a lot better than it was, which is good. And
Yeah.
I'm hoping that I was a catalyst for that. Sometimes me leaving the way I did, I think it should have been a wake up call to people. So,
Right.
Yeah.
but when you have supervisors that neglect to see the potential in people, or are just such a sociopathic narcissist that they don't want anybody being better than them.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that could be just it creates just such a toxic work environment.
Why is it always those people though that get promoted? And you're like,
Exactly. And you're just kind of going,
really?
huh. And I know this I never used my military to do points for promotions until the last time, because I didn't want a specific person becoming a supervisor, so I made sure to use my veterans points. Only she got promoted still.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And it's like, are you freaking kidding me? It's like, do you look at the manager and you go, do you not work with this person every single day?
Right. Right.
Do not see what type of person this person is every single day, but yet you're still promoting them.
Yep.
I
Let's
don't
award them.
understand.
Yep.
Yeah.
I
And I
know.
would say, like, in some situations, I would say, oh, well, that's like, to get them off the floor, but that's not true
Why?
everywhere, right?
No.
Like, I mean, where we worked, supervisors were most of the time working with us. So,
Well,
Yeah.
yeah. Even our
you know,
we had one manager that when it got really busy, she'd come out on the floor and help us. I mean, she'd just call take, but who cares? It's just to get,
Yeah.
right.
it's like it's another person. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Thank you. Right.
Indeed.
But, we had a one manager, they thought that after our good manager left, we had this guy come in and he was an IT professional. So he had that corporate type of,
Mm,
and it doesn't work in a dispatch center full of women. Sorry.
right,
For
right.
sure.
He wanted to make everybody happy, and it's like you can't make everybody happy. Stop it. And when I left, our center was slated for 22 people. After I left, they were down to 12 people.
Wow.
3 people on each shift, and mandatory that patrol had to sign up for rotations and dispatch.
Holy shit.
Yeah,
Mm-mm-mm.
it was bad up there. I don't know what it's like now, but I'm happy. I'm retired.
Woo! That's right.
I have a sweet gig on the weekends. I'm a receptionist at a over 55 neighborhood gated community HOA. I go in and open up the building for them and make coffee and talk to old people all day. It's great.
Nice.
That's awesome.
And then the rest of the week is I do childcare for my 3-year-old autistic grandson.
Oh,
So
that's great.
so
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
busier now than I was when I'm working, but I don't care. I'm happy and I'm stress free and it's great.
Awesome. That is awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us.
Oh, thank you for
yes.
having me. You guys are great.
Well, thank you so
you.
much. Till next time, y'all.
All
Bye.
right. Bye. So, what advice would you give to somebody coming into it?
So take your time, but get a therapist right away.